moderator for the Township's short-term rental licensing webinar. Thank you for being here. The goal of today's webinar is to help us all understand what we need to know to start or continuing offering short-term rentals in the Township of Muskoka Lakes. Today is about just that, getting ready, making sure owners and property managers running short-term rentals know what they need to do to have their license in order and avoid any complications or even penalties. This isn't about the STR bylaw itself. The public and business community has weighed in, and the township has been working on licensing and the bylaw actually for several years, in fact. So I just want to remind you that today we're focusing on the next steps about licensing your short-term rental, so there won't be any surprises for you. I hope that sounds good. Bring on your questions, though. If you have one, you can be sure someone else is wondering about the same thing. To send your questions, please just enter your question in the Q&A feature. You see that at the bottom. You can choose your name to show, or you can ask a question anonymously. Let's all try it now. Can you all say hi in the Q&A at the bottom of the Zoom screen? I'll ask all questions so all can hear it. And if anyone watches the recording later, they'll understand what was asked. And yes, we are recording. So you'll be able to rewatch this, and the presentation will be up on the short-term rental website for anyone who wants to rewatch or anyone interested that couldn't be here today. I will hold all questions until after the presentation part, as some of your questions might get answered during that presentation as we move along. If your question has already been answered, you might get a written response in the Q&A. Now, enough from me. We have the experts here from the township, and they're going to show us how easy it is to use the new licensing portal and more. Jennifer, would you like to start us off?
Thanks, Nora. Appreciate the introduction. Again, my name is Jennifer Huff, and I'm the Director of Development Services here with the Township. And I just, again, also wanted to welcome everybody. I appreciate your attendance today in this, I think, really helpful webinar on how to apply for an STRA in the township. A lot of work has gone into getting us to this part of the process, and I really want to take a moment just to thank the staff that have been working for many, many months getting us to this point. So first of all, to Carly Bray, she is our new licensing officer, and she has been working diligently for all things related to the bylaw and working to get the portal open. And she will be the one that will actually be doing most of the presentation today. And as well, I want to thank Nora for her assistance in moderating this session today. Much appreciated. And then we have a number of staff here today as well who are going to help us from a technical perspective in the background, making sure this works. So we have Trish, Maria, Chelsea, as well as Mia, who has done a lot of work to get the communications out for this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our new licensing officer, Carly Bray, who is going to walk us through the presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Carly Bray. I am the licensing officer for the township, and I have been working on this project for a long time. I'm very excited that we now have our application portal open, and to tell you more about that in this presentation. I do want to remind everyone that during our question and answer period, we don't want to have any questions related to any specific properties. It's not the time to discuss all different kinds of scenarios, and also just for privacy reasons. So we'll steer clear of those types of questions today. If you have a specific question related to your own property, please feel free to contact me directly anytime following the presentation. I'm going to leave my contact information up on the screen at the end. So I'll leave that up for a little while. At the end, you can take it down, and you can contact me at any time by email or by phone. So to briefly just go over the decorum for the webinar today, we just ask that you keep yourself on mute, just for no interruptions. And as Nora mentioned, you can submit your questions at any time during the Q&A feature. So welcome again, everyone, to the Short-Term Rental Accommodation Licensing Information Center session. Nora Fountain, the Executive Director of the Muskoka Lakes Chamber of Commerce, has been kind enough to lend her time to moderate our Q&A session for us today. We're lucky to have her, and I'd just like to thank her, along with Jennifer Huff and the rest of our team that Jennifer introduced, for being here today, and to all of you. So to go over our agenda for today's webinar, we're going to discuss the following topics. We'll touch on what a short-term rental accommodation actually is. We'll go through the application process. We will talk about what industry-specific software the township is using to implement and run this program and what it can do. We'll go over the rental restrictions and the different requirements of operators. We will discuss the different penalties operators could face for a contravention of the bylaw. We'll discuss the different ways in which you can submit any concerns you have surrounding an issue with a short-term rental, and then we will take your questions. And as short as that seems, it might take some time, so we'll get right into it. So the entire definition of a short-term rental accommodation is up on the screen. There are really just a few main components that make up an STRA. One being that it is the use of a premises offering a temporary place of accommodation by way of some type of rental agreement, and it must be for a period of 28 calendar days or less consecutive. So any rental over 28 consecutive days would actually be considered a long-term rental, so this bylaw would not apply. And you can see from the last bullet point there that some uses that are already established in our zoning bylaw are not included as a short-term rental. So those would be hotels, motels, tourist resorts, bed and breakfasts, private camps, tent and trailer parks, or rooming houses. So now I'm going to we'll go through the application process. Our online application portal officially launched to the public yesterday. Just remember, any operator operating in 2025 must submit their application by the end of the year, so being December 31st, 2025. Yeah.
Did we lose audio?
No, I'm just switching to a screen here. No. Sorry about that. So the licensing fees, the license fees are annual. They must be renewed every year. So they're valid from 1 year from the date that they're issued. For properties zoned waterfront, community residential, just the R4 designation, and water body open space, the license fee is $1,000 annually. For all other zones, the license fee is $500 annually. So operators operating in 2025, like I just mentioned, must submit their application by the end of the year. The township is excited to offer a 20% discount on license fees to operators who submit their applications by September 30th. And licenses issued through this incentive will be valid from November 1st, 2025 to November 1st, 2026. So even though you will be submitting your application early, your license won't be effective until November, and that'll give you your valid license right through the end of the rental season next year. So up on the screen now is our pre-application checklist. This is available on our STRA webpage. I'll have a QR code for that on the next page. I'll also leave it up at the end of the presentation, and that'll take you right to our STRA webpage. So for the application, we require all of the property owner and property information. That would include articles of incorporation, if the owner is a corporation, what type of access is at the property, and up to a maximum of 3 photographs of the STRA itself. If you are an applicant applying on behalf of a property owner, we would require all of your information as well as a signed owner authorization form. And all required forms are available on our STRA page. We will require the name and contact information for the responsible person designated for the STRA, as well as a signed responsible person declaration form. And this form is required even if the responsible person is the property owner. So even if you're choosing yourself as the responsible person, please still fill out the declaration form and submit it with your application. The responsible person is the person who the township or an agent of the township will contact in the event of a contravention of the bylaw, and that person may or may not be required to be on site at the STRA within an hour of receiving such communication from the township. For proof of ownership, we will accept a copy of your deed, a land registry parcel, or simply a copy of your property tax bill. For proof of insurance, it must identify the property as an STRA with a short-term rental endorsement, and it must also contain a minimum of $2 million liability coverage. We will require a site map as well as a floor plan, examples of which can be found on our website detailing what needs to be included on both. We have a Schedule 3 form, which lists all the buildings on the property and calculates the finished floor area. We require a signed licensee acknowledgement form as well as a renter's code of conduct. There are 2. One is for the owner. That's the one that we would require in the application. There's also one to be signed by the renter, which you would include in the renter's information package. This package does not form part of the application. It is available for you to print off the website, and you just need to add in the specifics of your own property and the required contact information. And that package gets left for each rental group that you have come into the STRA. So please be advised too that if you have prepared some of these documents early, they have been updated recently following some of the changes to the bylaw. So please just visit the STRA webpage to ensure that you have the most up-to-date versions so they're not returned to you when you submit your application. And now we'll go into an example application. So this is our short-term rental accommodation page. There's lots of good information on here. If you scroll down, this is where all the application resources are. I could show you lots of things on here, but we don't really have the time. It takes you through steps on how to navigate the cloud permit process here as well. There's lots of links there to help you as well. But this is what we're interested in is click here to apply. This is the link to the portal. So if you click here, it's going to take you to cloud permit. If you are a registered user, say you have applied for a building permit or a planning application, you would just log in here. If you're a new user, you would register for an account. If you are registering for an account, you will, once you enter your information, you will get an email back from Cloud Permit. I have had some feedback that email does sometimes go to a junk folder, so just be aware of that. Watch out for your that email to come to your junk folder. And if it does, be sure to make it, to add it to your list of safe emails, because you will continue to receive lots of emails from Cloud Permit during the application process. So just something to be aware of. So once you've registered and you have your account and you go in, you'll have something that looks similar to this. My dashboard might look a little bit different just because of my account, but you will select to create a new application. And this is what it will look like. It's going to ask you to select your municipality. Mine defaults to Ontario and Muskoka Lakes. You may actually have to select these for yourself, but you'll want to select Ontario and Muskoka Lakes. It's going to ask you for the type of application. We have 3 available. Licensing is the one you want. So you would hit create application. There's only going to be one available option to you, which is short-term rental accommodation. That's all you'll see available. So that will be defaulted. And it will also default to I am the applicant, which just means you're the applicant of the entire application. So you'll leave that defaulted and hit next. And this is where you will enter your address. So you can start typing in your address, including a unit number, if you have one, up here in the in this address bar. You can also search by roll number if you have your property tax bill handy. I'm in a training environment right now, so it doesn't work that well to search by address. So I'm just going to grab an address here. So once it's there and you can see that the information matches yours, you can hit next. Just make sure that obviously the information matches your address and roll number and hit finish and create. So once you're into the application, something to watch for is this taskbar along the top. These red little caution marks will turn into green check marks as you go through the application. And this is actually what it'll look like. All of these will be closed. So you have 3 separate categories: parties to the application, the form itself, and then your attachments. So in the parties, we're going to open this up. It automatically has me as the applicant, and it will have you automatically defaulted as the applicant as well. If you want to change anything, you can go in here. If there are 2 property owners, you can submit by putting just both property owners' names in here. I've had that happen already. Makes it easier. So if you are not the property owner, you can click here and add a new party and click by inputting the details manually, and you can just add the property owner in here and hit add at the bottom. Won't be grayed out once you input all the information. If you are the property owner, you can just assign a role to an existing party, click on yourself and close it, and it'll just add you as the property owner. So we'll pretend that I'm the property owner for this one, and that completes the parties to the application. And you can see that it's turned into a green check mark along the top here. So our next step is the form itself, and you can see it's grayed out. It hasn't been started yet. So you click into the application form. I won't go through the whole thing, but it does ask for all of your property information. It asks about occupancy, which we'll get into a little bit later, but basically occupancy under the bylaw is 2 persons per bedroom. You can seek for a higher number on this application, and that would be done right here, and we'll get into that a little bit later. All the responsible person information is here, and if you are an applicant applying on behalf of a property owner, that it asks that here. If you were to click yes, it would ask for all of your information. And then it goes through the different documents. And once you are completed, you would hit close forms and go to workspace. So I happen to have one here that is filled out, and once it's done, it would turn green, and up here you'd get the green check mark that your application's been filled out. So then the last step is to go to attachments. So we'll open those up. These ones here that are listed are the required attachments. So you can't move forward until all of these have been uploaded. However, there may even still be a couple of attachments that you require depending on your application. For instance, if you were an applicant applying on behalf of a property owner, you would be required to upload an owner authorization form. That's not a required document, but it is something that you would be required to also upload. These ones that are listed here are the absolutely have to have required documents. So you can see that the ones in green here I've already uploaded, and the last one that's missing is in red here, the site map. So you can drag and drop files into this area here, or you can click here and you can go and find your site map where it's saved on your computer, Once you have selected the file, under type, you just find the type, which is the sitemap. Once you've clicked it, you click done. Then it turns green since you've selected that. And now we're done. We've got all of our documents uploaded. We've completed the form. You can see them all down here as well. And then the next step is to sign off on the application. So you can check that all the information is right. There's a declaration at the bottom you can read here. And then you want to click sign off. Takes a little minute to sign off, and then at the very end you are going to submit your application. And that's it. Now it's been submitted. It shows up here the time it was submitted, and this is now your workspace. So you will get an email from Cloud Permit showing that it's been submitted and confirming that. And then you will receive emails from Cloud Permit along the way telling you once it's in review, telling you all the steps actually along the way. And there's a messaging feature up here where you can actually send a message to township staff here if you have a question. So that's another nice feature that Cloud Permit offers. So you can see I just got an email that my application was submitted. So that's the application process. It's fairly painless. We'll go back to the presentation. So the township has two software systems that we'll be utilizing to aid in the facilitation of this program: Cloud Permit, which we just looked at, and Granicus. Cloud Permit, as you just saw, we are using as our online portal for submitting applications and issuing licenses. Granicus identifies properties throughout the township that are operating as short-term rentals, and it assists staff in monitoring for properties for compliance and investigating and addressing STRA concerns. Granicus will also be providing a 24/7 hotline that will be launching in the future, where the public can submit concerns they may have related to an STRA at any time, day or night. So now we'll go over the rental restrictions that come into effect on May 1st of next year. Under the bylaw, occupancy cannot exceed 2 persons per bedroom. However, as I mentioned earlier, there is a spot on the application to request a higher number. So the building division will confirm whether the sewage disposal system is at the premises is designed for the higher occupancy that's requested, as the maximum occupancy cannot exceed the limit of the sewage disposal system servicing the premise. So it will ultimately be up to the township to assign the maximum occupancy for each approved STRA license. And children who are 2 years old and under do not contribute to the occupancy number. So getting into the 2 rental restrictions, the final 2, the summer monthly break is applicable only to properties zoned, again, waterfront, the community residential R4 designation, and the water body open space zones. So the summer monthly break essentially means that STRA owners must take a 1-week break from renting, so 7 consecutive nights, during the months of June, July, and August. Property owners and their families and friends are permitted to occupy the premises during the summer monthly break. It just cannot be rented. This week is not able to bridge months, so it has to be a full week in each of those months, and it can be whichever week the operator chooses. The calendars on the screen are for illustration purposes only, so the week could run from a Wednesday to a Wednesday or whichever works best for the operator. The next one is the summer rental frequency. Again, it's also only applicable to those properties zoned waterfront, R4, and water body open space. And it's also only applicable between the Friday immediately preceding Victoria Day and the Tuesday immediately following Labor Day of each year. So STRA owners are limited to accommodating only one rental group every 6 consecutive nights. So I know a lot of people get hung up on that, thinking that it's a 6-night minimum rental, but there is no minimum or maximum night number of stays. Basically, if you choose to rent for 2 nights, you would have to wait an additional 4 nights before renting to another rental group, because you would have to reach the required 6 consecutive night interval. So because you're only allowed to have one rental group every 6 nights, you can rent for as many nights as you want. You just have to only accommodate one group per every 6 nights. So again, if you wanted to rent for 3 nights, you would have to wait an additional 3 nights before renting to another group. If you were to rent for 6 nights or more, you can rent to another group immediately, as long as it's above the 6 days. If it's under the 6 days, you just have to wait whatever number of nights corresponding to make up to the 6 days before you can turn it around to another group. So here is one example of how a month may look for an operator choosing to only rent on the weekends. As you can see, they've chosen for their first rental to be the first Friday of the month, and it's a 3-night rental, meaning they would need to take a 3-night break following to equal the 6-night requirement before being able to rent to a new group. So you can see on the 12th of the month, the 6-night interval begins again. So since they're only choosing to rent on weekends, their next rental is on the 2nd Friday of the month, and it's another 3-day rental. So since the 12th counts as the first night in the 6-night interval, they'd be free again to rent on the 18th. And then they're choosing to observe the summer monthly break at the end of the month. So this is just one example of how a month might look for an operator. Obviously, there's lots of different ways it could be broken down, but this is just to give you an example. And this is also a schedule to the actual bylaw if you want to take another look at it. And we do have illustrations available on the STRA webpage as well. So under the bylaw, there are other requirements that an operator must adhere to, such as keeping a record of all rentals, including the date of entry, the length of stay, and confirmation of receipt of the signed renter's code of conduct. And this record, whether you want to make it a book, a logbook, it must be available for inspection for the length of the license and then 2 months afterwards. Operators also must provide each rental group with the renter's information package. They must display the STRA license in a prominent place in the applicable STRA. They must notify the township of any changes to the information that was provided in the STRA application. They must notify the township within 15 days of any such change occurring. They must display the STRA license number that they're given on each online advertising method that they use. And they must ensure that the responsible person that's designated for the STRA is available to be on site within 1 hour from when a communication is sent by the township or by an agent of the township. And then finally, they must maintain the STRA in a clean and sanitary condition with adequate measures for the storage and disposal of garbage and waste so as not to attract wildlife and make sure that the waste is obviously properly disposed of. So we'll just briefly talk about penalties available to the township for contraventions of the bylaw. We have a demerit point system, which forms part of the STRA bylaw, and we have our administrative monetary penalties, which are issued under our AMPS bylaw, and that can also be found on our website. So the demerit point system is one avenue that the township has to issue penalties to operators that have contravened the STRA bylaw. On the screen are some examples of specific contraventions and the corresponding demerit points that would be issued against the operator's STRA license. Demerit points expire after 3 years from the date of issuance. And once a property accumulates 15 demerit points within a 3-year period, the property owner's STRA license would be suspended. They would no longer be able to operate for a period of time determined by the township. Usually it would just be until that situation is rectified. And you can refer to Schedule B of the bylaw for a comprehensive list of all the contraventions and their corresponding demerit points. And our administrative monetary penalties, like I said, are issued under the township's AMPS bylaw. So they are essentially fines that are issued in placement of issuing court charges, which the township uses for contraventions under many of our bylaws. On the screen are some examples of contraventions and the corresponding monetary penalties. As you can see, AMPs are issued on a graduated penalty scale, meaning if an owner has a first penalty confirmed and is issued a second one for the same offense, the penalty is doubled and goes higher if there is a third offense. This process, though not a court process, does offer operators the option to appeal the decision to a screening and/or hearing officer through the AMPS process, which again can be found on our website. And we'll just go over how to submit concerns. There are a few ways to submit concerns to the township. So if you're familiar with our report a concern feature on our website, it can be found right on our homepage, right on muskokalakes.ca. It's a fillable online form that you can submit at any time. All complaints are anonymous, unless they do proceed to court or a hearing review, but that would be discussed with you prior. So, and Granicus will be providing that 24/7 hotline that I mentioned earlier. That'll be launching in the near future. So you would be able to call that at any time to submit a complaint. And depending on the type of concern, that may require the responsible person for the short-term rental to attend the premises within that 1 hour to address the complaint. And then also the bylaw department aims to have seasonal officers working later into the afternoons, on weekends, and on holidays throughout the summers to address STRA concerns occurring outside of regular office hours. So before we take questions, I'll just leave this slide up for a minute. This is my direct contact information, so please feel free to contact me with any specific questions you might have about your own property or any questions that may come up in the future concerning short-term rentals. There's also a QR code on the screen. If you wish to use it, that will take you directly to our short-term rentals page. You'll be able to find lots of important information on the program, how to submit your application, help on submitting your application, as well as the link to our application portal. And I would just like to thank all of you so much for attending and taking part in the presentation. And maybe just leave that up for another couple seconds. But with that, I will hand it over to Nora to begin our question and answer portion.
Thank you, Carly. That's a great job. We do have a couple of clarifying questions here. One, and I think some of them have been answered, but it's good to go over them again. If operating in 2025, but that's the last year that they're going to be operating, is an application still required?
So they don't plan to operate in 2026.
That's my understanding.
If they don't plan to operate in 2026 and they're going to be completely finished operating in 2025, then they would not need to submit an application.
All right, thank you. This is something maybe you could look up while we answer a couple of other questions. I had someone ask if you could show us a typical floor plan. So like those floor plans that you already had put up, had downloaded, what they would look like, but that might take you a few minutes.
Well, they're on our website. I can share my screen again.
Excellent. One question that came in before was, is it okay to rent my STRA for the weekend? But I think you answered that by showing that you've got to rent for 6 consecutive days during those particular summer months. And so you could rent for 3 and then would have to hold for those other dates. So I think that kind of answered that question.
Yeah, I would agree, Nora. This is an example floor plan here. The only thing this one would be missing is in each bedroom, we want to see what occupancy you would like in each bedroom. So here, in bedroom 2, you could put occupancy 3, bedroom 3, occupancy 2. That's the only thing that we would be looking for that's not on here, but you can see the smoke alarms and CO alarms are noted. The exits must be marked. You can see all along the side here in the bullet points, everything that needs to be included. But again, this can be found right on the website. So
Okay, and you don't have to, you can draw that yourself. You don't have to go hire a planner or anyone to draw that, or does it have to be shown that it was drawn by a professional?
No, that's right. We don't want anybody having to go spend money to make these drawings. They can be done by the owner themselves or
Oh,
anyone that can help them with it.
thank you. Um, Here's a question. If an owner does not decide until sometime in 2026 that they wish to rent, are they restricted? Your slide said applications had to be submitted by December 31st, 2025. So again, this person is considering potentially renting but hasn't decided. So do they still have to have that licensing app in?
So if they're renting in 2025 and they do need to submit by the end of the year. If they are a new operator and they are looking to maybe they're not sure if they want to rent in 2026, then obviously they can submit an application later. But if they are operating in 2025 and know they'll be operating in 2026, they need to get that application in by the end of the year. If they're operating in 2025 and they're on the fence and they don't know if they're going to be operating in 20 in the next year, I mean, we'll not force them to submit an application if they don't know that they'll be renting. Obviously, we'll review it. If it comes in at a later date, we'll have to look over it, and there may be some additional questions that have to be asked and discussed with the operator.
Thanks. Here's a good one too. For the responsible person, if you can't get there in 1 hour, do you have to assign a property manager? How do you handle that, Carly?
So there does have to be a responsible person designated that can make it to the property within an hour of being notified. So if an operator doesn't have someone local that they could designate to be that responsible person, there have been a lot of people who have been hiring companies to fill that role. If that's the only choice that they have, that's certainly what a lot of people have chosen to do.
Okay, connected to the question about when to put in your licensing application, I think there's a question about a 20% discount, and I believe that there was some incentive to be an early bird. Can you
That's right. Yes, the township's happy to offer a 20% discount to all operators who submit their application by September 30th.
So how do they actually get that then? You would just see the date and you would either, like if they've already paid, how do they actually get the discount?
So what happens is when an application is submitted, there's a preliminary review done before an invoice is sent out. So, and I handle all of that personally. So I would apply the discount, being able to tell when the application is submitted. So as long as it's submitted by September 30th, you'll get that 20% discount for this year. And those licenses will be valid from November 1st of this year till November 1st of next year.
Okay, I got a great thanks on that answer. There was also the question, it's just a clarification because you did cover it, but this person was thinking that their septic might be able to handle more than 2 people per bedroom, and then could they get a higher occupancy limit? So, but I noted that you did say the township would decide what that occupancy limit is. So I think you've covered it, but could you just clarify?
Yeah, for sure. So if you think it can handle it and you're not totally sure, you can still request it on the application. And ultimately, it will be up to the township. They will review the septic documentation for that particular property and make a determination whether or not it would be sufficient to handle that occupancy number. So, you can request it and then it'll be up to the township to determine what the maximum occupancy will be.
All right, we've got a great finishing question here if no other ones come in. But I hope that when I answered questions, I also put in some information for people where the short-term rental information site was, where all of this information lies, where the link is. I don't know whether you can go directly to it, but the licensing application link on cloud permits there. Plus Carly's email is there if you have any questions. And I know that Carly was planning on putting this presentation up on that website, but the question is, will you be emailing out this presentation?
We don't have an email list to send out to, but it will be posted directly on that page. Thank you, Nora, for putting the links in. So on that link, on that STRA webpage link, we will get the presentation posted up there so anyone can rewatch, or anyone that wasn't available to make it today will be able to watch it.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess we can potentially share, let me just see if I can share that information again in case people didn't see it. I'm going to just grab those links one more time, and I'm going to put it in that answer that we just had. So you'll have it, and then that's where you'll be going. Oh, I have my hand up. Is there any way to ask via microphone, or do I need to type? Hang on a second. So the answer is you have to type your question. I'm sorry about that. I know it's a little inconvenient, but that way we can, I can ask the question so anyone who watches it later, because they can't see these questions typed, right? So please type your question and I will ask it for you. And as I said to the last question, I'm also going to add in, if I can, oh no, it's been answered. Oh, I see. As soon as I answer it, it's done. But let me type the answer here. So here are some links that I just put in. The first one is to the Township STR website. And then also the second one is the application, and that's the ca.cloudpermit.com gov login. And Carly's email is also there. And oh, and there's someone who's going to rapid type them one at a time so we don't wait. So is there anything else that you wanted to cover? The portal went live yesterday, and once again, when is that early bird deadline if I want a discount?
September 30th, as long as you apply by September 30th.
September 30th. Okay, here's some of the questions that are coming. Do we need to include floor plan drawings for inaccessible parts of the building, such as basement, locked closets, etc.?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Nora?
Yeah, it's a good one. Do we need to include floor plan drawings for inaccessible parts of the building? So building that will be locked off, the basement, locked closets, that sort of thing. Do you still have to have those on the floor plan?
We just want living space that will be accessible to people that are going to be staying in the STRA. So if the basement wouldn't be accessible to renters, then we don't need to see that. Just the accessible living space. But so generally speaking, for a basement, no, but if there's a closet, show the closet.
Okay, just looking for the next one. Okay. Some specifics on what are the responsibilities of the 1 hour accessible person? Are they to answer questions to the township in the time of a complaint, or to police the issue?
So it depends on the situation. It'll be a case by case basis because it'll depend on the infraction and it will depend on this type of situation. So, if it was, I'm not even going to get into examples, but if it required some infractions may require the responsible person to attend and deal with the situation. And sometimes it may just be a phone call to advise them and let them know about what's happened, and may require them to do some follow-up at a later time. But the responsible person must be available and aware that it could be possible that they might have to attend within an hour.
Okay, and I think that part of the question was, do they have to tell, if they've dealt with the issue, do they have to tell township every single time they've answered, if they answer a call or something like that?
So no, so part of the Granicus module that we have actually will deal with that. So the responsible person will get a telephone call and have the opportunity to report back to them. So it actually works pretty seamlessly, and it's set up for them to deal with it quite easily, and they will just simply need to return a phone call or even a text message. It comes in a text message sometimes as well. So it makes it pretty easy for the responsible person.
Okay, so that person had 3 questions, but I only saw 2. Let me just check the open questions. Uh, I think that just got answered because they're asking, is phone call is available in 1 hour by phone okay, or does it have to be face to face on the property? And that you just answered that sometimes it could be just a text, a phone call. You might not necessarily have to have that responsible person show up. And a final question, I think here, because we're getting close to time. Oh, one more, you sure? Yes, please type your question. And while you're typing that question, I'll ask this one is, are guests allowed to use a bunkie? So I guess if that bunkie isn't part of the rental, are they allowed to use it? I think that's the question.
So STRA licenses are issued to the entire property. So a bunkie would be usually that's on the premises. So it's going to depend on the premise and the license and what's included in that. A lot of times, the bunkie's going to be included in the license. So it would depend. I would probably need a little bit more information about the property. I, I, I doubt there would be a situation where the bunkie would be there and not be included on the license. It could happen, but this is one of those questions we were kind of trying to maybe avoid, and they could reach out to me with like specific questions, a specific question about a specific property. I'd probably be able to answer it a little bit easier, with more specifics, maybe by email,
All
just
right.
because, yeah.
And I think we're wrapping, but so for those who, if you've had your question answered, feel free to leave us, but thank you for coming. But I will ask this question. I think it was regarding slide 14. So in the example there of the 6-day window, the person's asking if he understands it correctly, the second stay in June could be on Monday, June 9th. No, why is it the 12th? I think it's actually because you were using a June 2025 calendar, but I'm not quite sure the question there, but I don't know if you can bring up slide 14 again.
I'm just looking at it myself for a second. What was the question, Nora? Sorry.
6-day window. In your example, if I'm understanding correctly, the second stay in June could be on Monday, June 9th. No? Why is it the 12th? Because the
No.
first 5 days of June were not booked. I think the person asking, I think it's because you've used a June 2025 calendar. Is that possible as your example? Like it would be
Uh,
different because the first 5 days of June were not booked.
yeah, the first 5 days here, I'll
She's,
just share it again.
we're pulling that
And
slide.
there is one more thing I wanted to add before we leave, something that one of my colleagues brought up that I wanted to share.
Oh, so do hang in, participants, please. And
Um, so because these first 5 days weren't booked, they don't count towards anything. So this first 3-night rental is going to the first rental group. So those are the first 3 nights. So then they have to take a 3-night break to equal the 6 nights. So then the 12th would be where they could turn it over to a new rental group. And that begins the 6-night interval over again. So I'm not sure, they said they thought it would be the 9th.
I can see where the confusing, I think because,
They were
when
including the first 5 nights.
first, yeah, the first 5 nights.
Mhm.
And then the rationale maybe not necessarily doesn't hold true for the second 6-day window. I'm going to ask that this one go directly to C. Bray. So Carly is CBRAY@muskokalakes.ca. So if you could send those kinds of specific questions, because not everyone will need to hear that one, or it's very specific to your needs. I think that Carly could probably answer that better directly, if that's all right. See,
That's great.
they're noting that June 12th isn't rented yet. Day one starts there. And so it's not, it's an issue with the 6-day window. So maybe they can reach out, and you know what?
Yeah.
When we put that up, there's also a frequently asked question. I think it's a really good question once we figure out how to make it very clear. Maybe that's something that could be added to the FAQ on the website.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Nora. And sorry, just the last thing that I wanted to go over with the cloud permit process. When you've created your application, you've really created a workspace that you can log into and log out of. So if you start your application and you don't have time to finish it, you can leave it in draft form and sign out and come back in and sign in. We won't be able to see it until you've actually submitted it. So township staff won't be able to see that draft application status until it's been submitted. You can still send us a message, though, if you require assistance. You can still send a message through that messaging system or feature that I showed you at the top of the screen. But just so you know, when you're in you're in the draft stages of your application. Until you hit submit, the township staff can't see that that application.
And again, I'm getting some questions about why we can't turn microphones on, and I had answered it privately to the one person, so I apologize to the group. But so the answer is that in a webinar format like this, attendees can't turn their don't have access to audio. It was the way the format is, so that way it could run within the time allotted for anybody who wants us to watch it later. It keeps everything moving along. Our apologies for any inconvenience. Anything else? Sorry, I'm trying to type this answer at the same time, so I'm watching for it. Let me just see if there's an open questions. Again, it's an issue with the 6-day window. I don't think I see any other questions. Let me see. If that's it, I think we've got them. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Carly?
I don't think so. If anybody has any more specific questions, or if they're having trouble with the 6-day window or anything else that they want clarification on, they can feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions after the presentation.
Just putting in cbray@muskokalakes.ca again. And of course, you can always call the township and get through to Carly that way as well. So I'm just gonna one last check here on the open questions. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Jennifer and team, for taking the time to explain how the licensing works. A reminder, the licensing portal is open right now. If you have questions, go to it's engagemuskokalakes.ca. I think that gets you to it, but either through the township, you can find this short-term rental website. We will have this presentation, which is a very large video file, so that's why it can't be emailed. It will be up on the site in a few days. Carly, as soon as you've edited just out the front beginning chat.
We live streamed it to YouTube, so it's up on YouTube already, but we'll also transfer the file over to the website as soon as we can.
Okay. Also, the chamber is here to steer you to the right people. If you want to call the chamber, we're happy to connect you as well. That's what we do. Thank you, everyone, for being online with us, and have a great day in Muskoka Lakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora.